Good day, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Military and Foreign Affairs Network. I am your host, the voice of reason. Today, we are continuing our ongoing coverage of the war between the Russian Federation and Ukraine. Now, today, the big story coming out of the conflict is the United States is going to be sending 155 millimeter cluster munitions to the Ukrainians. Now, on the surface, in the mainstream media here in the United States, the sending of these cluster munitions appear to be purpose-driven, meaning that the mainstream media here in the United States is saying that the cluster munitions will give the Ukrainians additional capability. Now, first, what is a cluster munition? Let's have a look at exactly what the United States is sending to the Ukrainians. So here is the M42/M46 DPICM M48A1 DPICM projectile. So when this 155 millimeter artillery round is launched towards a target, it opens this round and it dispenses dozens of these smaller grenades over a target area. Some can be anti-personnel. Some can be used as high-explosive anti-tank. And some can be used as rapid deployed minefields. And here in the United States, we're starting to move away from the use of cluster munitions, and I don't even believe cluster munitions have been produced in quite some time. Because of the precision capacity of systems like the Excalibur and the HIMARS, the U.S. is gravitating more towards those systems, those unitary high-explosive systems that are very, very precise. These are not precise instruments of war. Again, the whole concept behind dispensing a large number of grenades out of the round is because they're relatively inaccurate. So why are the Ukrainians getting these? Is it going to give the Ukrainians an additional capability? No, it's not. It's probably going to reduce Ukrainian capability. But the mainstream media is not going to tell you that. So again, why are they getting these M48A1 cluster munitions? Because they're running out of 155 millimeter unitary explosive rounds. The United States has sent more than 2 million 155 millimeter rounds and tens of thousands of Excalibur rounds. The U.S. Army and the U.S. Marine Corps are incredibly concerned about the amount of 155 millimeter stockpiled weapons that have been sent to the Ukrainians. If the United States were to become engaged in a large-scale conventional war, say against China or another adversary, and given the nature of this war and how quickly both sides are going through 155, 152 millimeter artillery rounds, the Pentagon is very concerned. The United States has gone through a huge number of 155 millimeter artillery rounds and even HIMARS as well. And that's why the Ukrainians are being sent these cluster munitions. We, the United States, is running out of the unitary, more effective 155 millimeter, and especially the laser-guided, GPS-guided Excalibur rounds. But very concerning. Is this going to give the Ukrainians enhanced capability? No, probably not. Especially if you're looking to clear minefields. You can use heavy artillery, you can use high explosive artillery to pummel a minefield and hopefully give your frontline maneuver units the ability to circumnavigate through those minefields using high explosives if you don't have adequate sappers or battlefield engineers to remove said minefields. And the Ukrainians definitely lack that. So the Ukrainians had been using these 155 millimeter rounds to try and clear the way through minefields. Will these systems clear minefields? No, they won't. And actually, as the Ukrainians use these, there's a very real risk that Ukraine's own maneuver units, infantry units, will face unexploded M48 3A1 unexploded ordnance, meaning these small grenades that will be littered around the battlefield as the Ukrainians try to push forward. So this is not a good thing for the Ukrainians. This is not something that is a new weapon system that is designed to enhance Ukrainian capability. Look, the Ukrainians have cluster munitions. They've had Soviet-era cluster munitions that they use for their 152 millimeter systems and other artillery, their 122 millimeter systems as well. They have that. But the United States is running out of those unitary, those single explosive 155 millimeter rounds. So not an enhanced capability, and a sign that the United States is starting to run low in terms of munitions that they're going to hand over to the Ukrainians. Now, while all this is happening, we're hearing reports of new plans for a Ukrainian offensive operation. Where is this going to occur? Possibly in the area to the west of Orikhiv. We think the Ukrainians are looking to try and pressure Russian lines. Let's turn on the fortification map where you, the viewer, can kind of see what's happening. So, tough operation for the Ukrainians. Again, the main defensive line of Russian forces has not been penetrated. Now, this offensive operation is going to be just to the east of this Dnieper River reservoir. This has changed a bit because of the detonation of the dam that took place. Things are a bit different now in terms of what this terrain looks like. Difficult to actually ascertain because there's no recent satellite image of what that looks like. But the Ukrainians are going to try to exploit and attempt a move, we think, towards Tokmak and possibly Melitopol, another offensive drive. Now, we know the first one failed. The first one was unsuccessful, and it looks like they're going to try again. Is this going to happen during the NATO summit in Lithuania? Quite possibly. Quite possibly. I think they're going to try and send a message. And what that message is going to be, I don't know at this point. Is it possible that they're going to look and try to plead a case through operational failure to the North Atlantic Treaty Organization? Difficult to say. Do they think they're going to be successful? I'm not sure why they would believe that. Again, you're looking at multiple, essentially 3 lines of defensive barriers that the Ukrainians are going to have to penetrate in order to get to Tokmak, in order to get to Melitopol. But it looks like their first objective is going to try to be at least to get towards Tokmak. So another wave of Ukrainian brigades are going to be thrown at these Russian defense lines, which are incredibly significant. Let's have a look at the Ukrainian units that will be attacking Russian positions. So first, you have the Russians lined up. You have the 429th Motorized Rifle Regiment. You have elements of the 810th Naval Infantry Brigade, the 125th the 125th Regiment, Novorossiya Unit, DPR, the 503rd Motorized Rifle Regiment. And then you have additional units such as the 19th Motorized Rifle Division in Strategic Reserve to support frontline Russian forces, and also 19th Motorized Rifle Division forces on the front line itself as well. The Ukrainians are deploying the following units. If we look here in this deployment area, the main units we believe that the Ukrainians are going to use to attack towards Tokmak and Melitopol are going to be the 118th Mechanized Brigade. This is a NATO-trained, NATO-equipped brigade. We're going to see elements of the 65th Brigade. Additionally, we're going to see even Ukrainian National Guard units that have transitioned into these so-called assault brigades. And I don't know if the 23rd Public Protection Brigade is an assault brigade, but I think it's a sign that the Ukrainians could be running out of assets, and they're going to use these National Guards to kind of backfill as light infantry units for this ongoing operation. And obviously we have units of the 128th Mountain Assault Brigade, the 116th Brigade, the 15th Operational Brigade of the National Guard. And again, this has probably been formed up as an assault brigade of the National Guard. Remember, you kind of have two parallel armies. You have the National Guard. A lot of those nationalist forces were absorbed into and continue to be recruited into the National Guard. And then you have the regular Ukrainian army, such as the 47th Mechanized Brigade. We believe this unit, the 47th Brigade, at least one or two of its battalions have been rendered combat ineffective because of ongoing losses. The 47th is still on the front line, continuing to fight and probe the Russian front lines, but it has been greatly degraded through the loss of equipment, both confirmed Bradley fighting vehicles and the attached Leopard 2 main battle tanks that were attached to the tank battalion of the 47th Mechanized Brigade. And that's kind of what we're sitting right now. And obviously, more additional units of the Ukrainian military, in all likelihood, have been brought in to try and shore up this offensive operation just to the west of Orikhiv. But again, a tough road to hoe for the Ukrainians. And again, compounding that is the problem with a lack of artillery. And again, this is why we are seeing the deployment of those cluster munitions being sent to the Ukrainians. The U.S. simply does not have enough 155 millimeter unitary. They don't have enough Excalibur rounds to be sending to the Ukrainians at this point. The U.S. arsenal is at risk of such depletion right now that, again, if we were to face an external threat, the United States would be in some problems until the U.S. was able to ramp up production on those 155 millimeter rounds, which takes time to do. So again, I think we are in a learning phase of modern war and just how much artillery modern armies go through. And by some extent, this was not anticipated. I think you have to go all the way back to the onset of World War I, where both the Western Allies, the Russians, the Germans, it really dawned on them just how much artillery is used in what at the time was modern war. And, war has changed, but at the same time, you still, mass has a quality of its own. And both sides like to use lots of artillery. Right now, the Russians have the advantage in both production and the continued use of just massive volumes of heavy artillery fire. And we've seen that through the course of the conflict, and the Russians continue to ramp up production of their heavy artillery, the 152 millimeter, 122 millimeter, 130 millimeter, and 200 plus millimeter rounds that the Russians are using. So again, Russians dug in like a tick. The Ukrainians continue to try and pound away at these lines and continue to take extensive casualties. That's where we are at for today. Thank you for joining us. More to come very, very soon. And as always, have a good day.